Okay, I have often said that I can tell an animator when I see their comics. Okay, so I have read all sorts of webcomics. I read a lot of people's early webcomics because I do critiques for my Patreon. I look at all sorts of webcomics, and there are some animator tells that are both positive and negative. I'm going to compliment sandwich this because part of the issue that animators have with comics, and the reason I can see them, is because animators are really good at a whole bunch of things, and the flaws shine through because they're so talented in other ways, which sounds which is so funny to say. But like when I'm reading a comic done by an animator, they have amazing flow, very moving, living images. They tend to draw very like keyframe-esque. I don't know. They really capture movement in a way that I find like other artists have difficulty with. So that is definitely one of the tells. You know, there's like stronger character design that animators tend to have because animators understand that if you're going to be like drawing a character multiple times repeatedly, you want to have like something that is easy to repeat but still has like a strong sense of design. Animators are very good at storytelling, especially like thinking of like storyboard artists. I feel like a lot of storyboarders end up doing comics, or like they're very like closely related, and I think there's strong senses of like panel composition and just storytelling through visuals in ways that someone completely new to the field of art would struggle with. And so what ends up shining in the negative qualities are some things that don't quite translate over to comics. And that's where like, and it's usually at that point where I can kind of clock the animator in them. I can see like, okay, this is like amazing, very fluid drawing, but here are some lacking areas. And first and foremost, this is less the case for storyboarders, less the case for someone who thinks larger picture, but animators do tend to add too many panels, and like all sorts of, you know, writers and beginning artists, beginning comic artists will do this, but like, again, it stands out because of all the other positive qualities. But animators tend to overfill pages with too many panels. They think about the continuity of movement a bit too much and can like bog down their stories. Like sometimes like animation is thinking a little too much from like movement to movement, whereas when you're thinking about comics, you want to think more in terms of like story visual stuff. And again, like this is less an issue with like someone who is into like storyboarding. I think you're better at figuring out the pace between panels, but it's definitely something that I notice with animators is there's sort of like using panels to create animation in a way and just like adding too much to your comic pages. In general, like a lot of the issue I find with animators is that they don't think about the comic page. They think about individual panels within a page. They have like great tools for creating movement, but don't use it effectively on a page. So like when you think about a comic page, there's like multiple aspects to the composition. And some of those include like the overall image of the page. Like when you first look at it, like what do you see? What do you take in? Then there is the flow of the page, which is how you are guided through the panels with your eyes along the imagery. And then there is the individual panel layouts, which have their own composition to them. And then on top of all that is the text, which often gets neglected because the text, the bubbles, balloons, whatever you want to call them, they aren't considered part of the composition. I find animators do struggle typically with the lettering, if that's not something they've worked with. Bubbles are part of your composition and they need to be treated as such. They need to be in important areas. They need to be not considered like additional information. They're not little notes. They are part of the story that's being told. And I think, yeah, what really sticks out to me is because animators are so good at creating motion, the flow is one of the things that breaks it for me the most. So when you're thinking about the flow of a comic, you want to create motion, eye lines, the bubbles, everything needs to follow a certain path, and you're guiding a reader from one point to the other, like to the next point. It's like using the motion that you're creating, you would be moving the composition along. All of that movement flows throughout like a single page, you know? You're not dealing with a handful of separate images. You're dealing with like parts that make up a whole. And that is always something that just like sticks out to me just in general. When I'm reading a story, I'm like, I feel like an animator has made this. There's like so much good movement, but it's not being utilized in a way that benefits the entire page. And yes, I'm definitely thinking about the bubbles. You need to cover things up with bubbles. You need to kill darlings with bubbles. Bubbles are so important. Your text is so important. It's so like vital to your story, and it shouldn't be like shoved to the side or be like an afterthought. I think there's a lot of aspects to just lettering in general that fall more into the realm of graphic design, which is like its whole own subcategory of art. So like, I don't think that's entirely just animators. I think a lot of artists struggle in that particular aspect of comics. I think what really kind of cued me into like this whole thing in general was like anime. Honestly, because anime, you kind of get the reverse of it, and you can kind of see how like panel and pace works in a comic versus in animation. Because if you look at something that it was originally a manga and then kind of gets poorly translated into an anime, a lot of the times there's all like the call out type panels. A big battle is happening and then we cut to someone reacting to it. And in animation, that is taking like, if you take a moment to like cut away from that to look at this person, you're taking the entire scene away and you're taking actual physical time to do it. Whereas in comics, your time is less one-to-one with real time, because in a comic, you can be showing the action and showing the call out, and it's all happening simultaneously, and it's initially like gathered into like your mind at the same time, and then your reader can take time to slowly read each little bit and appreciate them in a way that like animation moves a lot quicker, you know? I would love to have visuals for this sometime, but that's kind of like my general thoughts on the matter. Paneling, pacing, all of those things are like aspects of comics that I feel like animators need to like key in on like a bit more, is just to understand the relationship between time and panels and how the whole composition creates a story, how the whole composition is what is first digested by the reader, and then we move into the panels. It's just like a different way that you approach a comic page versus an animation where things are shown to us very deliberately, one after the other sequentially. I guess this is very different in Webtoon. Webtoons are a little more like animation. They're kind of somewhere in between, but comics are very interesting in the way that they have this initial composition that you look at, that has impact, that has a focal point that draws you and gives you kind of a summary of things, and then you read it and consume it. And being able to balance that and create a story is a unique task that comics give. And if you're an animator, it is a good idea to learn more about the whole composition and then every little aspect therein. The gestalt, you know? And yeah, anyways, if you have more questions about that, please leave them down below. I love answering questions. Questions are fun, and I'll see you in the next one. These daily videos got me tired, but I'm trying my best. All right, see ya.